Hello, folks. This is Joe from My Geek Scene. I'm here with Yuri Lowenthal, as you can see on the screen. It looks on my left side. So,
Right. Yeah. It's opposite for me too. Like when I, okay. Anyway.
for those of you who don't know, he's an incredible actor. He's Sasuke from Naruto. And recently, well, not necessarily recently, Peter Parker from the Spider-Man series, because now I can say series with the recent announcement. So,
That's right.
how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. Thanks. It's good to see you and hear your voice again after these many years.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, the nasally voice is very soothing to everyone.
Oh, please. Please.
So, actually, I would like to get started on a live action series that you did within the last few years called Orbital Redux, which was
I would
filmed
love to talk about
before,
that.
which was filmed before a live audience with no retakes. So, feel free to talk about your experiences on the show.
Yeah. It was Orbital Redux is like you said, a sci-fi show that we performed live weekly. And by that, I mean, no redos. As soon as we started, we had to keep going through no matter what went wrong. And not only were we performing it live, but the score for the show was being performed live at the same time that we were performing by a band in the studio right next to the set. All of the sound effects, all of the little bleep bloop blorps, that you get in sci-fi were all being played live by a Foley artist from a computer. All of the visual effects that you see were all happening in real time, whether that was screens, outside the windows of the spaceship, projecting things that the actors were seeing as the audience was seeing it, or the explosions that were happening in the ship were all practical, effects and things like that. So all the cuts were happening, all the edits were happening, everything was happening in real time. And it was definitely the highest tightrope I had ever walked. But the project was introduced to me by a longtime friend, Stephen Calcote, who I had worked with on a number of things. And he came to me one day and he said, "Hey Yuri, can I come over? I've got a project to pitch you." And I'm like, "Sure." And he came over and he said, "Okay, so I'm building a spaceship and I want you to pilot it. And and I cut him off and I said, "The answer is yes. Whatever you have to say next doesn't matter. I'm in." And then, of course, he told me what it was, and I became terrified because it was all live. But I have a theater background, so I have experience doing live performing and improv, and it scared me because I hadn't done a lot of that recently. But I found that those things that scare me, rather than running away from them, if I dive into them, it ends up being hugely rewarding. And this project was, and unfortunately for the audience, it was on a platform that was not well known at the time, called Project Alpha. It was Legendary's sort of digital platform, and then it went away soon after we did the show, so we never got a shot at a season 2 there. But Stephen and I, over the last couple of years have thought, man, I'd love for more people to see the show, and maybe we should take all of the footage that we recorded, because while it was live, we were definitely recording. In fact, we had like 10 cameras recording from various angles. And so we took all that footage, we cut together the best possible version of each episode based on the footage, and remaster the audio, things like that, and said, okay, if these episodes stand on their own, we'll try to find an audience for them. If it was just, if it was the gimmick of being live, if that's sort of what the show was riding on, we'll let it go. We'll let it be what it was going to be. But we cut the episodes together and they turned out great. Had, some people watch them who had never seen the show live, and they, to the last person, were like, "I can't believe you're lying to me. I can't believe this was a live show." And so we said, okay, we're gonna find a home for these 8 episodes of this sci-fi drama, and we found a home at Dust, which not a lot of people know.
That's where I watched it.
Oh, okay, yeah, great, excellent. It's like a sci-fi. It's like what Shudder is to horror. If you subscribe to Shudder, I have the Shudder app and subscribe to that. Dust, I don't think requires any kind of like subscription, but they have a YouTube channel, and they've that you can watch, where you can watch it. They have their own sort of app. They have their own there are plenty of places to watch it. In fact, you may have Dust on your smart TV right now and not even know it. But you can watch all 8 episodes now on Dust at watchdust.tv. Look for Orbital Redux, and or however you might want to watch it. But I'm super proud of it. We screened it in a theater not that long ago, like on the big screen, and I was surprised even at how well it held up on the big screen. And I'm just excited and proud to be able to finally share it with the world, honestly.
And you should be. It was a good show. And I'm not saying that
Thank
because
you.
I'm talking to you. I did enjoy it. That's like one of the things that I like about like when I do interviews and stuff is like the research process. So I get to find out about things that I would have normally not found in the first place. So thank you for introducing me to another cool thing to check out.
Thank you for watching it.
Oh, well, it was for research, but I ended up
right. You had to. Yeah.
Well, I didn't have to, but I did enjoy it. I like going the different path, as you know, with my interviews. So was the show, I know that you were a producer on the show. Was the show partially inspired by Cowboy Bebop? Reason why I asked that is because of the Down on Their Luck crew in a Down on Their Luck duo in a broken ship and thematically important music. Plus the CDs looked like records, just like the DVDs and Blu-rays of the Bebop series.
Oh my God. Nobody has ever drawn a Bebop conclusion. I will say this. I would have to, because it's never come up before, I would have to ask the director, the writer and director, Stephen Calcote, if that was if that was in his head at all. But even if it wasn't, it is such an awesome and honorable comparison. I'll take it. Nice. I will 100% take that. Yeah. Wow. Right. I should make sure that because I know that Mary Elizabeth has watched some of the show. I wonder if Steve's watched it. Just as far as actors who have taken on the the Bebop personas, for the dub, I should see if that's something that they felt too. Oh my God, I love this, Joe. We're already on such great footing by you comparing the show to Cowboy Bebop. Oh my God.
I do have one more question about the series, though.
Yes.
So, and I don't know how to pronounce it. So, why was I want to say Sana Beat Records record label catalog used for the series?
That is a great question, because music played a huge part in this, and Stephen, again, the director, has a connection over at Sana Beat Records, and they did. They put out some amazing songs in the 60s and 70s, and Stephen has always loved that music and wanted to find a way to make that part of the story. I mean, it was always part of the story when he wrote it, and contacted his friend over there, and we worked out a deal for us to be able to play a lot of those songs, to acquire the rights to some of those songs for the show, in addition to one track which had never been played before, which we sort of got out of the vaults, which was the title, sort of the opening credits theme to the very first episode, which I love so much that I wish it had been the opening credits for all the episodes. But and there is a certain as far as the story goes, in the story we have to use old tech in a new way to combat computer viruses and hackers and so on, and it serves as sort of a great comparison in that this is an astronaut who also goes back to that he's in love with that old tech, as it were, old music, CDs, having a CD player in his spaceship is an obvious anachronism, but he loves it. Like that's how he wants to listen to the music that he loves from I know. And if the camera were pointed the other way, you would see so much physical media on my shelves that I definitely feel you. So hopefully you felt a bit of kinship with Max Levon-Olinsky, who won't let this go, and even with his new pilot comes in and makes fun of him, she finds out soon enough why the old stuff works.
Yeah, I mean, granted, yes, I've been buying more stuff digitally nowadays as far as music goes. I
Sure.
still do physical purchases, depending on the band.
Yeah, correct. Same. And because I listen to vinyl, I always love it when a band comes, does a vinyl pressing, even though they don't really need to in today's day and age.
So you haven't even gotten to vinyl at this point. I've had a lot of audiophiles tell me it's like you got to go with vinyl. You got to go with vinyl. I'm like, I don't have the space,
Yeah. And you know what? And those people will always say that. And I mean, I'm not such a huge audiophile, vinyl head that I will that I'll try to sell you on that, but it's a fun little thing,
All
it's
right,
a
well
fun
then,
thing. Yeah.
impromptu question since we are talking
Shoot.
about music.
Yes.
Best concerts that you've been to?
Oh, best concerts.
I mean,
that
I
I've
know
been
that
to.
you're an actor, and like a lot of times from
Mhm.
actors, I get like, well, I'm so busy, and I get that, but I'm sure you've carved out time to go to concerts every once in a while.
Oh yeah, and I would say best concerts ever. Well, I'll go with most recent best concerts, which obviously I've not been going to a lot of concerts over the last couple of years. But right before it hit, I went and saw the Jesus Lizard, which it had been a long time since I'd never seen them live. And David Yao is such a character, the lead singer. It was nice to hear some of that stuff performed live after so many years of listening to it. And Gogol Bordello, I love for the energy of those shows. I mean, I listen to the music for the energy of the music. It makes me want to dance my ass off. And I can't think of the last time that I was in a mosh pit. Yeah, I mean, probably since I was in high school or college. But I saw Gogol Bordello just a few years ago. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I was in the pit again. It was crazy and sweaty and beautiful and wonderful and I loved it. If I went back, Michael Nyman did a bunch of soundtracks over the years. Probably his most famous soundtrack was for the piano, but he does amazing soundtracks, and they did a lot when I was living in Japan. He was touring, and I went and saw, and it was just one of those things where you close your eyes and you're in a whole other place. But I grew up, in high school going to, which is why I recognized your Op Ivy shirt, like your Op Poison Ivy shirt, right away. Because I grew up in the Metro DC area, going to a lot of hardcore shows, and I just, I love the live music scene so much, but have gone less and less as I've gotten older, and like you said, because I am busy, and because my ears don't work as well as they used to. I'm definitely one of those guys who stuffs toilet paper in his ears now during shows, and of course, when I was a kid, I never used to do that. Yeah, I know. No, you
I always
have to.
brought. I once lost hearing in my right ear. I was oddly enough, it was here in Grand Rapids. We have this thing called Celebration on the Grand, where they would bring in bands each year. So like,
Yeah.
Shortly after high school, Eve Six was performing. And I was just like there. I wasn't necessarily there for Eve Six. And that was the first show that I went crowd surfing, got dropped.
Hey, you got to have the full experience, man.
And well, it was like the weirdest thing for like getting dropped at for crowd surfing. So I started in the back, and then as I'm working towards the middle, inexplicably, there was this random square of emptiness. There was no
passed into the emptiness.
Yeah, there was like a random square of emptiness. There was no equipment there. It was just this empty square. So I fell onto the dirt, and I was like, "Woo!" And then went to the next crowd, and then crowd surfed over. But at that show, nice. I wasn't wearing earplugs, and I lost hearing in this ear for about 2 weeks. And I said, if I ever get my hearing back, I will wear earplugs from this point on. So for sure.
Yeah, no, I get it. So what was the loudest? What's the loudest show you think you've ever been to?
That's easy. All right, I'm getting interviewed.
Okay, yes. No, it's going to bounce back and forth.
No, that's we clicked last time, and this is what I like right now. So the loudest show that I've ever been to was this band called Sun. There's they're a drone band. Well, they've done like musical experimentation, but they're mainly known for like drone. So they are so loud. When I went and saw them in Pontiac, I felt their vibrations up to mid chest level. And that was because I would have had this, because I had two people standing in front of me. If I would have been up front, and I normally don't go up front for shows, but this was like a small venue.
Yeah.
I would have felt like I would have had a full audio body massage. Like when Sun came to Grand Rapids, I actually didn't make it to that show, but my friends who were there was telling me like the ceiling tiles were starting to come undone and fall because of the vibrations.
Wow. Yeah, that was how I saw My Bloody Valentine probably about a decade ago, and I felt that way. And then I think the sort of the two loudest shows I can in memory are Chemical Brothers. I went to a Chemical Brothers show once, and it was, I think I just had to leave it, and I was wearing ear protection at that point.
Oh, no kidding.
And I think I still, after a while, just had to leave. And then early on, like small club shows, was a band called Steel Pole Bathtub, which you likely have never heard of. But yeah, I think I damaged my ears at that show for sure.
Oh man, because you said Jesus Chain. No, wait, Jesus Lizard,
Jesus
Lizard, and the Mary Chain. Was that the?
No, that's a different band. Jesus and Mary Chain, different band.
Okay,
that I also grew up with though. So yeah, so good call.
Yeah, because like I've heard that before. Well, I mean, obviously I made the wrong connection, but like I've heard of that other group. So
yep,
man. And I could easily talk to you for the rest of this interview with like
about music. I mean, yeah, I finally got to see, the Pixies at Coachella, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, when they finally sort of got back together. That was glorious too. And it was the Pixies and then Radiohead, and like it was just an amazing sort of outdoor live show. But yeah, no, I miss going to small venue live music.
Actually, I went to my first show since January of 2020, just this last Friday.
Oh wow, how was it?
It was wonderful. Low turnout, unfortunately, but
sure. People are so cautious.
I was wearing my mask. I'm vaccinated, but like my face was hurting from like smiling so much, because I don't generally smile unless I'm like laughing. But like it was much needed, and I was so glad to be there.
Great.
So actually, want to transition to the next thing.
Please.
No, it's all good, dude. I can easily cut out questions and like hopefully come back another time down the road. It's all good. So
okay, right
on. So another, I'm not going to pretend that these segues are even remotely good at this point. So another show with good writing, Camp.
Yes. Oh my God, you can get that on Blu-ray?
I did. Well, the first two seasons, seasons 3 and 4 are still unreleased. I mean, I watched the rest of them on Rooster Teeth, and that's plays back into what I was saying earlier about how much I like being able to do research and finding a good show to check out. So I got to revisit Camp and actually watch season 4 for the first time. I don't really necessarily have any questions about it. I just wanted to say, like, thank you for being a part of that show, because that show was so good. I'm still hoping for a season 5, but if there isn't a season 5 and where it ended, I'm completely happy with that too.
Yeah, the writing was stunningly good on that show, and so funny. That, I mean, it's one of those shows definitely where I would get the script, because unfortunately, because I'm not Austin based, I would record my lines just kind of in a vacuum. But it was one of those shows that was so funny on the page that I would routinely just crack up in the booth and have to edit those parts out before I sent it to them. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I feel very lucky to have gotten to play a part on that show. It is, as you know, a kid growing up with camp experiences, a lot of that stuff hit home in a very true way.
Well, see, the thing about that, what I liked about it was the long-term storytelling with callbacks.
Yep.
Because like in the first, case in point, like in the first season, Quartermaster killing the Forest King, and then they pay it off in season 4, and I'm just like, who keeps up continuity like that?
Right. Yeah. Was that the plan from day one, or are you guys just sort of working it back in? Like, I wish I knew, honestly.
I mean, it's just such a good show. So thank you for being a part of Camp. And I honestly, like I said, I am hoping for a season 5.
Yeah, me too.
So I do have to talk about our last interview. one of my biggest regrets when I look back at watching that interview was I had brought up that you were the narrator for Films of Fury, and you were talking about how that, you mentioned like how that was a high point for you.
Yep.
And instead of letting you tell me why that was a high point for you, I just went a different direction with like, what's your favorite martial arts movies? So why was being a narrator for Films of Fury a high point for you?
Okay, I would say I'll give you three reasons
Okay.
why. One, because I got to work with friends on it. That project came to me through friends, and so working with friends is always great. But I've done that a lot. But that combined with basically getting to do my version of Quentin Tarantino, in that talking about movies and being so excited, like that was sort of my touchstone for that character. Made it great. And then because I've grown up, watching martial arts movies and doing martial arts, so to get a chance to be part of something that not only gets to just do a big lens on that, and to as well as to help hopefully introduce a whole group of people who might not be into those kind of movies to those movies, was great. Just because I just I grew up watching those movies, and to get to be involved in a documentary about those movies was just a thrill for me. Yeah, since then I've gotten to play Spider-Man, so I might have a new high point, but those high points are constantly changing. So, but yes, those would be the reasons why that was a high point for me.
I know that you were a fan of martial arts films, obviously. So, thoughts on the late Sonny Chiba?
He was an icon. He was a master. He was good at so many things. And while you can be a good martial artist, it doesn't always translate in film. You need that charisma as well, and he had it. And he had a good run, man. It's always sad, but it's always nice to leave the planet, leaving a legacy, and he certainly did that.
Did you see the Street Fighter?
I have seen the Street Fighter. Yes.
Looking back at it, it's just such bad practical effects, but I have to love it. I have to love it, and I believe that's the first film that actually introduced the X-ray punch.
Yes, I think you might be right. I think, holy shit, did I see that anytime before? I don't know, because I've watched movies. Sometimes I'll find a really old movie late in life, and I won't even know where it sort of fits timeline wise. But yeah.
So, why is Chow Yun-fat one of your favorite actors?
Chow Yun-fat is, and thank you for remembering that or noticing that, or I don't know where you found that, but it is true. And it comes from two places, I think. One, I just love the movies that he's in, especially earlier films, but also as my appreciation of him developed. Okay, it's three things. So here's the second one. As my appreciation of him developed, he led me to other films that I might not have been interested in, non-action films, dramas and comedies and romantic comedies. And it was always remarkable, and continues to be remarkable, although I haven't seen anything from him recently, how fluidly he moves between genres. Like, certain actors are good at certain types of movies, but every time you watch a movie with Chow Yun-fat in it, it's like he was born to do that type of movie. And I, having grown up with him on action films, it was hard for me to believe that he could also do slapstick comedy, or that he could also do romantic comedy, or that he could also do drama, without any action in it. So I just always found that remarkable. And then the third thing is, years ago, they were doing a retrospective in New York when I was living in New York of his films. And one of the selling points on going to this particular festival is he was going to be there afterwards to comment and sign autographs. And I thought, here's my chance to meet Chow Yun-fat. And so I went to this festival, this retrospective, and he was signing autographs afterwards, and I lined up with a whole bunch of other nerds, And right as I was almost up to the
No.
to meeting him, this has a happy ending, don't worry. I was like the next one up, and they said, okay, everybody, after this next guy, it's done. So I was like the last guy, and I walked up to him, and I said, hey, Mr. Chow, you're just, an icon, and I love your films, and I forget exactly what I said, and I said, look, your hand must be tired from signing so many autographs tonight, so instead, I'd like to give you a photo of me, and I gave him my headshot, which in retrospect sounds like the cringiest thing ever. And it was a picture of, it was my headshot at the time. And I said, and he stopped because he was obviously, momentarily confused. And he took the headshot and he looked at it. And then I will always remember this. He stood up and he put his hand out, and I shook his hand, and he said, thank you. He said, I look forward to working with you someday. And even if he didn't mean it, and this is not a slight to him, I'm just saying, even if he didn't mean what he said, the impact that what he said, the impact of what he said on me was tremendous. As a young actor and a lover of film and a lover of his work, for him to even just utter those words, it still keeps me warm on cold nights sometimes. I'm like, remember that time that you shook Chow Yun-fat's hand and he said, I look forward to working with you someday? Like it, even if I never see him again, those words will always keep me warm. And of course, I also have to remember that the people behind me were like, you're a dick, to me, I'm like, that I would be for that they had also been waiting in line forever like me, but they didn't get their chance. And that I handed him a picture of me they thought was the gauchest thing ever, or the douchiest thing ever. I don't know what they were thinking, but I definitely heard some comments behind me. But yeah, no, I'll always remember that. And when you're trying to make it in this weird, fickle business, getting to connect with your idols and not have them ruin it for you, because I've had experiences where I've talked to famous people and it has not gone well at all. And it makes it hard to then watch the things or listen to the things, that person has produced, because all you can remember was that time that they were, rude to you. And that's not a slight to them at all. I mean, they've got a lot of things on their mind, and maybe I asked the wrong question. Maybe I pushed the wrong button. Maybe they're having a bad day. Like maybe I shouldn't have approached them, on the street or in the restaurant or whatever it was. And the answer is no, you shouldn't do that. It rarely ends well. But yeah, for that experience to have gone that well at that time in my life and my career was very important to me. So if you're listening to MI Michigan, my geek scene, Yun-fa Chow, then thank you.
No,
because he listens. He's one of your biggest listeners.
Yes. Well, if he is listening, I would like to say, sir, thank you so much for your part in this film, Hard Boiled.
Oh my God. I think I have that exact same release of that film.
Actually, and a quick note for that, I would like to say that after rewatching that again last night, yes, I haven't watched that in years. I bought that years ago, and it's just been sitting there. I'm convinced that John Woo, as a director, has sadistic tendencies towards the stuntman and actors with the amount of explosions that he uses around them.
Yeah, I would agree. Just Hong Kong cinema in general puts their stunt people through a meat grinder.
I mean, it was crazy rewatching that. I'm like, oh my goodness, so much fire and explosions.
Yep.
So next segue. It was a little hard boiled. And speaking of hard boiled, yes, I happen to have found a book that you had wrote. We had talked about it last time, but I have some questions aimed towards this.
I would like, it's funny because I'm glad you brought it up. And I will take your questions. But it's funny because Tara and I have just talked about. I released a podcast once where I read the book out loud, and I don't know that it exists anymore out there. But Tara the other day was like, "Well, do you still have those files? You should put it out as an audiobook." And I was like, I should. But let's talk about the book first.
All right. Well, obviously we talked about it the last time, so I have a few specific book related questions for you, good
Great.
sir.
Hit me.
I know that you split writing duties with Keith Ikeda Berry.
Mhm.
How did that work? Did someone write one chapter and then the next person wrote the other?
Yes, it for those who don't know the background to this story, it was part of a 72-hour novel writing contest that Anvil Press, I don't know if they still run it or not, but at least used to run out of Vancouver. And you had to write a novel in 72 hours. You could have up to one other person writing with you if you wanted a partner, but you couldn't enter into it with any finished writing other than like an outline if you wanted to come up with some sort of outline. And so Keith and I met halfway between our respective cities, so mostly halfway, in Wichita, Kansas. We both flew in, went to a motel room, drank a ridiculous amount of coffee and ate an enormous amount of sugar and wrote a novel in 72 hours. And the duties broke down like this. Yeah, we took the first hour or so to come up with an outline of the book. We were free to sort of go off outline if we needed to, but we needed some sort of structure. And we put each sort of chapter onto a different note card, and we stuck those note cards up on the mirror in the hotel room. And then one person grabbed one and got to work writing that chapter, and the next person grabbed the next one. And if one of us finished our respective chapter before the next person, then you just go and grab the next note card off. So yeah, we basically wrote chapters alternately and then got together at the end. Partially, I don't think we had time to really review very much in those, in that 72 hours before submitting it. But afterwards, we did get together and sort of went over each other's chapters and kind of unified it a little bit. So I think the final version that you hold in your hands has a little tweaking here and there for things that may not have made sense, or for extra little jokes that we may have thought up in the meantime. But that book is essentially 72 hours of madness and a love of hard-boiled fiction and film noir and sci-fi.
So why did Decameron Wichita have an 8-hour love limit? Oh yeah, I'm getting down to the nitty gritty with some of these questions.
Really are. I think at that time I was obsessed with what love was and what made relationships work, and why sometimes you would, date someone and it would only last a certain amount of time, and then it seemed to just, it just wouldn't work anymore. So I think that was bouncing around in my head, and we thought, hard-boiled detectives always have a very, troubled love life. It is very hard for them. And then of course the women they fall for always end up being, murderers. So I think that was bouncing around in my head at the time. Sort of, is there sort of like a shelf life for love or for relationships? And do you finally then find the one that then doesn't have, that shelf life? So I think that, plus the idea that we were, in a compressed time, for writing the book, that may have fed into it as well. But thanks for getting me to dig deep into old memories. I like this, Joe. Go. What's your next thing?
So all right. Why was he in the teal dress that the extra heartache with long legs wore?
I think it was probably because we liked the idea, me and Keith liked the idea of deconstructing people's ideas of what hard-boiled detective fiction is, and the idea that the detective would wake up the next morning wearing the dress, basically all, in drag, sort of, lets your imagination run wild as to what the hell happened that night. And B, to have the hard-boiled detective not in his trench coat and fedora and cigarette dangling from his lips, but in a dress with lipstick on, was about as far removed as you could get from that. So I think that's where that came from.
And final question for
Mhm.
Tough City.
Yes.
If you were to revisit Tough City, will Decameron Wichita find Moxie Lamore again?
That's always the Mulder Scully question. Like, I mean, they have great tension, and them not getting together creates the tension. And once you get them together, I guess you just have to create a different kind of tension. I don't know if Moxie Lamore would. Yeah, we'd have to pay that off. I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say if we ever got back to it, yes, because that might be a hell of a team up, actually, because they never actually get to meet in the book. He sees her, falls in love with her from afar, and they never actually get to meet. So, and you can tell in sort of the epilogue that while she seems this force of nature that where love is beneath her, she seems like she might be lonely too. And that was the right place to leave it for that book. But yeah, no, I think we'd have to bring her back in the future. She's too cool.
All right. And speaking of things with bullets, I watched Any Bullet Will Do.
Wow. Yeah.
So would you like to talk about your experience as Pickett Rowe, the despicable psychopath with the biggest knife that I've seen in a film in recent times?
Yes. I would love to talk about that.
Oh, well, quick,
yes.
Before you say that,
yes,
I actually took a screenshot of like my television to send it to my girlfriend. I was like, look at this knife and look at Yuri. And she's like, oh, she said like you looked deranged. So very good, sir. Good. Like for your range of acting abilities. I mean, I expected that from you. Like it was like whatever you were going to do was going to be good, but well done, dude. Like I was convinced that you would have just gutted this dude and not thought twice about it.
Right. No, thank you. Getting to play that role. I mean, you ask any actor and they'll want to play villains, just because you really get to dig your teeth in. But I love working on this film for so many reasons. One was that on the flight to Montana where we shot the film, I started thinking of ideas for how this character talked. It's a Western, so it has to be, somewhat specific. But I love the idea that he's sort of this, not very well-read thug who loves the idea of being much more than that. So he would often throw in turns of phrase and so on that he probably heard somebody much more intelligent than him say, and not always get it right, or not, it'll be surrounded by very, sort of less than intelligent stuff. And so I added a couple things here and there, and then talked to the director when we got on set, and he was like, I love that idea, go with it. So I love that the director gave me the liberty to make that character my own. I loved that we were in Montana in the cold. When you're in, I mean, part of me hated it because it was super uncomfortable. But when you're acting in a movie like that, any I'm not a method actor by any sense, but those little things ratchet it up a little bit, ratchet up the reality for me as an actor. And so actually, having to perform in the snow or, in the cold was, I'm sure, helped. I love that I got to sort of grow out some facial hair and get really, scruffy. I love that I got to do bad things. I love the people that were working on the film with me. It's always, it's nice to get on a movie and to play your part and get paid or whatever. I mean, this was certainly, more for love than for money, this film, but the real payoff is getting to work with a group of good people. And there was a group of good people who really wanted to, make a movie, and everybody wanted to be out there. And because it was in Montana and because we were shooting in a small town, some people would argue it's for Montana, it's a big town, but people were excited about the movie that was being made. people were excited to be a part of it. People were excited to help. From a jaded place, you know, living in Los Angeles where everybody's making a movie, when you don't get that kind of love and support generally, and enthusiasm from the people around you, because you know that's what people in LA do. And you know, if you wanted to use somebody's house, they'd be like, yeah, well, how much are you going to give me, or you know, to use this or to do that, and you've got to get permits. And when we were there, everybody was just so excited to be making a movie, you know, all the local people, that I think that love was infectious. So that feeling was great. And just to, you know, to get a chance to play a despicable human being like that was super fun, because I'm not that guy at all. So to get to play in that area without you know, consequences really was great. The only downer was that in the edit we lost some things that I really enjoyed doing, that I couldn't wait to see on camera. But for the story and for editing, I mean, stuff ends up on the, you know, cutting room floor all the time, and you just got to sort of let it go. But I remember like doing some things, I'm like, oh, I can't believe that's not on screen. I understand why they did it, but I missed it, because I remember like, you know, in the moment, I'm like, after we finished, I was like, oh, I think that was good. Can't wait to see that. And maybe they cut it because it wasn't good. I'm not always a good judge of that, you know. Maybe it was terrible, I don't know. But so that the only downer was that you know, not getting to see some of those things. But that happens all the time. Thank you for watching it. I know I play you know, a very small part in it when you look at sort of the whole movie, but there's a scene from that movie that's on my reel, my newest acting reel. And so yeah, I definitely had a good time.
No, I enjoyed it.
Great.
I think everyone did a good job on that film, and it was believable too. Like the acting, it wasn't like B movie quality. So I thought the folks did a good job.
Thank you.
And I forgot to mention this earlier too, when we were talking about Orbital Redux. I did like the shelf life Easter egg that was in the last episode.
Yes. There actually two.
Oh.
Once when DP we catch him sort of reading a comic book in his office. It's a shelf life comic book, and then at the very end he gets the
okay.
the shelf life. So we set up a little bit, and Steven, the director for that, was one of the directors and producers on Shelf Life as well. So it is definitely a shared, like a mutual love for that show. Yeah, after you finish watching Orbital Redux, listeners, go and watch Shelf Life. It's all there, man.
So we're now going into the final topic of this interview.
I'm ready. I'm all warmed up. I'm ready.
Yeah. Actually, since the last time I did talk to you, and I mentioned it earlier in the intro, you became the voice of Peter Parker, Spider-Man.
I did.
So congratulations on that. I was so happy for you when I found out that you got that, because I was like, oh, this dude's gonna be a part of a big franchise now. Because like the game was good. I own it. I'm not gonna go grab it. I'm looking at it right now.
Yep. He's right back there. If you're showing video, he's right. He's right behind me.
So do you have any favorite Spider-Man stories while growing up?
Oh man, you know, I was a very fickle, as you know, as a youth, very fickle comic book hero guy. I would jump from hero to hero and then come back around again, and you know, whatever sort of book or character or artist sometimes, you know, caught my fancy, I would jump around. So growing up, I'm trying to think of like a specific Spider-Man story. I don't know. You know, I remember specific, you know, it's fun. The things that stick with you, not by, you know, not in any way an A-level villain in the Spider-Man canon, but I remember having an issue of Spider-Man with the Tarantula
Okay.
in it, which, if I recall, is a villain who just basically just has pointy shoes and will kick you with them. And there was just something about that when I was drawing my own Spider-Man comics and covers and stuff like that, it was always Spider-Man versus the Tarantula. It wasn't, it wasn't Green Goblin, it wasn't Doc Ock, it wasn't, any of his sort of top tier villains. But when I was a kid, I always went back to that. And I don't even honestly remember the story for that. And then growing up, I danced around a lot. I would read some Spider-Man comics here and there, but I went through a phase where I wasn't reading Spider-Man at all. And when I came to play the play the role in the Insomniacs game, I had to sort of go back and start to I just grabbed, it wasn't asked of me to do any research into recent stories, but I did start to pick up some just Spider-Man trades and trade paperbacks, and just start going through some of the stuff that I had missed along the way. One of the things that a strange, again, sort of not what I would have expected, one of the things that I loved in recent Spider-Man lore is his relationship with Deadpool. It is a very funny and beautiful romance that between them. And I've been trying to convince Insomniac that that's what they need to do, is to add Deadpool into the game. I don't think that's going to happen, but I would love to see that that relationship played out. I would love to be part of that. So yeah, I'm sure I'll think of like, oh yeah, but remember this Spider-Man story that touched you and broke you, so many years ago. Why didn't you talk about that? But it's not coming up now. I will say getting to meet Stan Lee while working on the game was also important for me, just because of what Marvel Comics was for me growing up, and for a lot of us, I think. And I think he had heard it all before, like as I weeping in front of him, told him how much he means to me and how much it meant to me. I'm sure he's heard it all before. He was still much like Chow Yun Fat, very gracious, and you could tell that he loved what he did, and whether or not he felt the weight of what he was giving all of us, and gave all to all of us over the years, with his many collaborators, obviously, but it was nice to be able to let him know that.
Absolutely. All right, then that inspires like a bit of a spin-off question, still on comics. Yeah. So obviously, who Bill Sienkiewicz is.
Very well.
We talked about that. Were there did you read like independent comic books, like Sandman, Transmetropolitan, The Boys, and stuff like that? Did you venture into that, or did you have particular favorite writers or artists that you enjoyed?
Yeah, I read, I started, sort of with the majors, with DC and Marvel. And then in the mid 80s, I was into a lot of independent comics. And that's where I found, Matt Wagner, Mage and Grendel.
Yes, and, Grendel, Hunter Rose.
Yeah, Hunter Rose, which I hear just finally got, I think that Netflix is going to do a Grendel show.
Okay.
Of the Hunter Rose arc, or the Hunter Rose, that sort of, that specific Grendel, which I've obviously been dreaming of for years and never thought was going to happen. But we live in an age where you can get a MODOK series and a Hawkeye series and and a Vision Scarlet Witch series, and so I was into independent comics for a while, partially as a collector, because I'm like, ooh, low print runs, I'm gonna buy a bunch of these comics and make a lot of money later, which only happens if that carries on and you ever want to sell your comics, which I never wanted to do because I love them too much. So I never made a dime on that. But you mentioned, Bill Sienkiewicz, and his run of Moon Knight was one of the things that really sort of got me into comics in a different way. I started reading comics differently when I started reading that, and I'm very happy that Moon Knight's getting its own show. And I'm curious to see how much of the DNA of that Sienkiewicz run, which I believe, until the more recent ones, I think, plumbed that mythology and that character unlike anything that came before it or after it for a long time, and is what really sticks with me. So so I grew up reading a lot of different kind of comic books, and these days I don't I don't read as many comic books. I will only, I don't, I don't have a pull box anymore, and I don't have a specific book that I'll like follow no matter what. It's mostly when somebody tells me about something and it sounds interesting, then I'll get it. Or,
Mm.
if it's a certain artist, or like I loved, Art Adams growing up, and, the Long Shot miniseries, and, everything. But, the problem with Art Adams is, yeah, his art is beautiful, but it takes him so long that nobody wants to, he couldn't hit any deadlines, so nobody wants to work with him. But I would follow, all of Bill's stuff, all of, Bill Sienkiewicz's stuff. I would, Electro Assassin, and, anything that he was working on, Ted McKeever. Yeah, I would go after certain writers and certain artists for sure. Um, rather than no, that's true. I mean, I would follow certain characters as well. I was obsessed, as many of us were, with Wolverine at the time. So anything that came out with Wolverine, I would get. Um, but these days I'm not reading as much, and I do miss it. I find, coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I don't feel like I have the time to read all the comics that are recommended to me or that I want to read, or watch all the shows, that look amazing. And we're living in a golden age in that respect, and I do love that. But I wish I read more comics.
Mm.
Yeah.
Two things before I start to wrap this up.
Yes,
Would you recommend Mage?
100%.
Because like I was looking at like checking out the books, because I buy trades and I buy omnibuses and compendiums.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do singles unless it's like I'm supporting
hard
like
these days.
a local
Yeah.
friend.
Sure.
But like Mage was like on my Amazon wish list, and I wish they like had like all of it in one, or like at least in 2 to 3 books. I
Yeah.
think it's like 6 volumes spread out, but
Is it okay? Yeah, because there was sort of the original storyline, and then there was sort of a Mage follow-up,
Mm.
which didn't carry the same weight for me as the first one did, but was still very, very welcome. Yeah, I would recommend it. I think that Kevin Smith is was obsessed with that series, and a lot of things that were in his film Dogma, I
Mhm.
feel were very influenced by him reading Matt Wagner's Mage. And I don't know
Okay.
if he's ever talked about that. He must have. I couldn't have just discovered that on my own, but it was very clear to me when I saw Dogma that he had been reading and loving Mage. I still think Mage deserves it, and maybe if the Grendel one does well, they'll go to Mage. I would have thought honestly that they would go to Mage before they go to Grendel. I think it would be a perfect uh, series for any HBO Max, Netflix, any of those Amazon Prime type places to pick up. It is, oh god, now the more I think about it, the more I can almost like see it. Yeah, no, I think you should read Mage.
All right. And the second thing, um, you mentioned like you followed some artists and stuff, and you talked about Art Adams and like
Yeah.
deadlines and stuff.
Yeah.
Like for me, like recently, like the world lost like my favorite manga artist of all time, Kentaro Miura, who did Berserk.
Yep,
And
I remember hearing that.
that sucked. And like
Mhm.
recently read like the final chapter that he worked on, and like he had been working on this series for like 30 plus years, and it's still not done. But if it like ends at where it ends, I'm actually completely happy with that.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
uh,
Now
that's
you're making me want to read that,
oh,
because I never have.
honestly, I would highly, highly recommend Berserk. It is, but however, though, it is brutally violent.
30 years.
Well,
30
no.
years of stuff to.
Well, no, that's the thing. Is like 30 years of stuff, but it's only like 41 volumes. That's the thing. It's like he would take, if you look at his artwork, it's so incredibly detailed that it takes him a long time. There's been times like there's been like a year between chapter releases. So it wasn't like he was cranking this stuff out on a weekly basis like most shonen manga writers. No, not even close.
Right.
So I would highly, highly recommend Berserk. But like I said, it's brutally violent. There is sexual assault in that comic.
Sure.
People die. It is not a fun, happy world. Except for, I like Puck, the character, because he's there for comedy, and he is much needed in that series. But highly would recommend Berserk.
Excellent.
So I have one more Spider-Man question before we wrap this up.
Yep.
Have you mentioned to Insomniac that you would like to play Moon Knight?
Yeah, Brian Intihar, the creative director over there, knows that I would kill to play Moon Knight.
Just get a DLC
I
going.
I bug him about it all the time. Yeah, no, he knows very well. Yep.
All right. Well, final 3 questions. Are there any upcoming projects that you would like to promote that you're allowed to talk about?
I would love to go back to Orbital Redux. Go to watchdust.tv or see if you got download the app and watch Orbital Redux. The new He-Man and the Masters of the Universe show just dropped on Netflix that I play He-Man on. So I would love for you to watch that.
Wow, I clearly didn't do my research on that one because I did not know that. So,
but that dropped yesterday, and your research always goes way back. So in the next time we speak, we can talk about that if you want.
oh, if you will allow me to do another interview with you, I'll gladly bring that up.
Excellent. So that trying to think of other things coming up. I don't know when it would come out, but season 2 of Dota Dragon's Blood on Netflix, I had a great time on. So you can watch the first season now. And then the stuff that that Tara and I do. Back to Orbital Redux for a second, I forgot. We just released on that on Dust, along with the episodes, a behind the scenes look at how we did all that stuff live, which is fascinating. I mean, I still watch it. I'm like, wait, we really did that? Why would we do that? We're crazy people. But the show's back to shelf life, and I produced a show with my wife. We would do a lot of producing together, but that she was more on the forefront on called What a Lark. It's also through our Monkey Kingdom Productions banner, which if you go to monkeykingdomproductions.com or Kingdom of the Monkey on YouTube, we've got a lot of our stuff posted on there. We're always trying to make stuff. Been a little slower since we had a kid and since the pandemic, but we've got a travel show on there too, from back when we used to travel, called Up, Up and Away. And yeah, just keep your eyes out. There's you can find me on Twitter at Yuri Lowenthal, and Instagram also at Yuri Lowenthal. You can also go to my TikTok, but I just started that and I'm old and not very good at it. So there are definitely plenty of places you can find out what we're up to.
Oh, you already answered question number 2 about social media, so never mind.
Okay, there you go.
And a final question. What would be your message for all the fans that have supported you throughout the years?
I love you guys. I was a fan before I got into this, and I'm still a fan, and I would not get to, I mean, you guys are the reason that I get to do what I do. So I'm so grateful, and I hope to keep surprising you for years to come. But thank you guys for making it possible to do what I do, because you're the reason.
All right. Well, Yuri, thank you so much for this interview again.
Joe,
appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your research. I appreciate you coming up with questions that nobody else asks. It's why I said yes.
Oh, thank you. That's what I do, or at least that's what I try to do. So I got to keep it humble. Can't be too cocky. Like I do my research.
Well, I'll be cocky on your behalf then. Joe does his fucking research.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, folks. Well, folks, this is Joe from My Geek Scene with Yuri Lowenthal. Take it easy.